Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gentex Multimedia live presentation, streaming live to your device straight from the beautiful Brisbane. Well, today there's lots happening right here. First of all, let's join the Parliament House for the live session, and then we'll go into the news later on.
There's no long waiting lines at the moment. I will be getting regular updates. At least 3 times a day I'll be notified of what the wait times are at our clinics, and that won't be just Greater Brisbane. We'll be looking across Queensland whether there's any surges and whether we need to increase capacity or set up any additional clinics. It is really imperative at this time that people come out and get tested if they have any symptoms. So thank you to everyone for their cooperation. And the last thing I say is respect. Please, we saw very long lines in our supermarkets yesterday. Again, it is completely unnecessary to race out and load up on groceries. The supermarket stores are not closed. I know some people are concerned that this may go beyond 3 days. Irrespective, we have never shut our supermarkets. They are essential businesses that will always be open so that we can have people being able to go out and get essential items. For those who are lining up and hoarding food, can I say the only people who are going to suffer from this are our elderly people who will be getting anxious because they're worried they might not be able to get food items, who live from week to week, potentially our pensioners. So please think of others. Do not go out. Do not buy more than what you need. It is a normal weekly shop. You don't need any additional items. And we ask that you show respect to other customers, to the retail staff, and of course, show respect to our frontline staff out there, all of our health workers who are doing such an important job out at clinics and our hospitals, to our police who are going to be out there checking compliance, to our ambulance officers, to all of our frontline staff. Please show respect. They're just trying to keep you safe, and we're trying to get through this as quickly as we possibly can. Any questions?
Can you clarify, there's a bit of confusion if people need to wear a mask in their car?
So our message is clear. Over the next 3 days, when you leave your home, put a mask on. That way we avoid confusion as to whether we need it on this time or that time, whether we're walking alone or we're in a car alone. The fact is, the best practice possible is at the moment you leave your home, put your mask on and don't take it off again until you walk back into your household. This is the way that we will keep our community safe and to ensure that we are taking the strongest measures possible over these next 3 days. Thank you.
Should we get started? Yes, please.
I might just put this back on. Thank you, Dr. Young.
Thank you. My team have just given me the details on that Jetstar flight. So it's JQ570. It arrived into Brisbane at 11 p.m. So it was the Melbourne to Brisbane flight JQ570 arriving into Brisbane 11 p.m. on the 5th of January. Thank you very much.
And there was Dr. Janet Young, who had a big meeting with all of us, our community leaders yesterday.
If I could just
another police
bring to your
rep
attention
coming
some
on.
of the things that have occurred since the start of the lockdown yesterday at 6 p.m. And as the Health Minister indicated, unfortunately yesterday we saw panic buying and large queues at shopping centres, which resulted in police having to attend to those areas to deal with that. The message is really clear. There is plenty of supplies. You don't need to do that. Please be patient and respect each other, although I'm happy to say that since that occurred yesterday, things have certainly settled down. We've taken very much a communication, compassion and compliance approach, so we are trying to get compliance from our community around what we need to do over these next 3 days. And if we do that right, hopefully that means it will only be those 3 days. So what we've done is seen police handing out masks rather than fines to date. So up until this morning, our police officers in the community have handed out 360 masks. And what's been really encouraging is that people are keen to wear them once they understand what's required of them. We've had very few instances where police have had to take action, and in fact there's only been 4 infringements issued in the Brisbane area overnight related to this, and in 3 occasions those persons were actually offered the masks, refused to wear them, offered again, and then were given directions because they shouldn't have been out and about as they were, and then failed to follow the directions. So police were left with no alternative but to take enforcement action, which they did. We've seen a significant reduction in our traffic. That's very encouraging. It is the weekend to stay home and do things at home with your family or friends, bearing in mind that you can only have 2 visitors into your normal household. So please abide by those restrictions. Overwhelmingly, our community is trying to do the right thing, as they have done through all of the COVID response, and we want you to keep that going. So thank you for doing that. We will continue to be out and about. It is a high visibility policing presence and communication. We have done intercepts on both the M1 North and South, and encouragingly there's been very few instances where we've had to turn people around and ask them to return home. But we'll be continuing to do that right through the next few days. So please make sure that you have the right reason to go out, and there are those 4 main reasons why people are able to leave their premises or leave their residences. Just to reinforce what the Health Minister said around masks, it's really simple. When you leave your principal place of residence, put your mask on and keep it on until you come home. You can't go wrong if you do that. Of course, if you need to eat or drink, you can take your mask off. But once you've completed doing that, please put it back on. And there are other exemptions around performing your work, and people need to understand how they apply to them. Overall, as I said, we'll continue to do this. Our police operations are operating effectively across the area. We saw a very quiet night in our liquor licensing area, so thank you to all the licensed premises that have listened to the messaging and did what they needed to do last night. I'll finish off by saying please expect to be intercepted by police if you're not wearing masks or if you're not out and about as you should be, and please, if you are asked to wear that mask, please put it on. Thank you.
So 4 people were fined for not wearing a mask while in Brisbane?
So no, there was 4 breaches of various things. The 3 that I referred to were people that were not wearing masks. They were offered masks by police officers. They refused to wear them. They were then given directions to go home because they didn't have exemptions to be out, and they've been fined for failing to follow the direction, which is a $1,300 fine.
So can I clarify, they could have got a $200 fine for not wearing a mask, but instead...
We're not fining anyone for not wearing masks at the moment. We're giving them the option to wear a mask. We're providing them the masks. 360 people have got masks. If they don't do that, we then ask them to do that. It's actually a more serious offence because they're not following a direction. So we're trying to work with the community on this. So the message is, if the police officers are offering you a mask, you need to put it on.
And can I just clarify, it is $200 the fine for not wearing a mask? But
That's a piece of work that's still underway, so we're not taking action on that at the moment.
Okay. Is that because there's no police power for that, is that right?
No, this is a processing that we have to go through when we create new offences to get everything in place. So what we're doing is, as we always do, is we're taking an education, communication approach, and our office has got 40,000 masks that they can hand out. So I think we've got plenty. What we need is our community to listen to the messaging, and if the police officers are engaged with you and saying you need to put this mask on, you really need to put the mask on, and they will give it to you. So it's a pretty good deal.
There was 3 breaches for masks. Was there another one?
There was another breach for a person moving in an area that they shouldn't have. So you have to have the 4 reasons for being out, so that was a breach of that.
Did they have a good excuse or not?
No, obviously not. They got fined. Thank you.
So just, if I can just reiterate to everyone to please continue to wear your mask if you're in that Greater Brisbane region, and we'll be updating Queensland again tomorrow at the same time, 9 o'clock. And I thank everyone once again for their patience and their cooperation. And please, everyone, stay strong and stay calm, and we'll get through this together.
So, a quick question. Yesterday we saw a mass exodus to the Gold Coast,
Yes.
Sunshine Coast. Is there any concern for people who have escaped Brisbane and gone up there? Should those areas be on lockdown as well?
We're not concerned. What we're asking people to do is that if they have been in the Greater Brisbane area, to actually stay in their accommodation until Monday, and we're hoping that people do the right thing.
Is there any update about that investigation as to how this nurse contracted the virus?
No, but what I can confirm is that Health have an investigation underway, and that investigation is being assisted by police.
And just regarding the cricket, is there any concern that the 4th test would have to be moved to Sydney?
No, as I said yesterday and the day before, that discussions are still happening and they're still positive.
Premier, your reaction to those scenes in supermarkets yesterday, the panic buying, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, well, look, there's no reason to do that. I just ask for people to be calm and be patient. We are not going to run out of food. There is no need to panic buy, and as the Health Minister said, we have a lot of seniors in our community, and it's really important that they get the essential groceries that they need. There's a lot of people out there that don't have a lot of money and they live by week to week. We need to make sure that they get the essential food for themselves and also for their families. So please, everyone, just be patient and calm. And this weekend is a good weekend to stay at home with your family and to do some odd jobs around the house, or indulge in some watching of Netflix or whatever you desire to watch.
Is the government preparing for a longer lockdown period than just 3 days?
Look, we will assess that on the Monday, but so far so good, Jack. 0 cases overnight is very encouraging. So let's see what happens on Sunday. Let's see what happens on Monday. These are the crucial 3 days that we need, and like I said, the whole country is looking at what happens here in that Greater Brisbane region, because we know that this UK strain is incredibly contagious. This is the first time it's been out in the community, and it's not to say it's going to be the last. You know, this could happen in any other part of the country as well. So we want to make sure that we do everything right and that we act very quickly and very hard. And I do welcome the Prime Minister's comments when he absolutely supported the strong action that we took.
When you got the information this morning and heard that there were 0 cases, what was your personal reaction to that?
I'm very happy, of course. I mean, Queenslanders have done a great job, and I want to keep that keep that record going. But we are dealing with something here we haven't had to deal with before. So we have to do everything we can in our power to make sure that we can stop that community transmission. And the fact that we have identified those 91 close contacts, that they're in they're all isolated at the moment, that is encouraging news. But what we do need to know is that if anyone out there has any symptoms in that Greater Brisbane area, please come forward and get tested. It is absolutely imperative.
I have a question for Dr. Young.
Yes, sure.
I'm just wondering, is there any evidence that this UK variant that has a faster transmission time, incubation period?
I don't believe so, but remember, this is still quite early. It's really only been circulating in the UK for a month or so it's early to be getting the information. At the moment, we know that there have been cases with the usual longer incubation period. We've seen that in Queensland. So at the moment, we're just managing with that usual 14-day incubation period.
What do people need to do if they were on that Jetstar flight that you mentioned?
Yeah, they should come forward and get tested and isolate until they get a negative result. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
So there are, ladies and gentlemen, the latest update from the Parliament House, and as the Premier has said that, it is a weekend to stay put. And the message from the police department is, if you are out and about without a valid reason and if you refuse to wear the mask, you will get a fine. The normal fine for not wearing a mask in the public place is $200, but the other guys who got charged, the $1,300 fine was because they refused to wear a mask, number one, when they were given a mask from the police, and number two, they were directed to leave the area as they had no valid reason to be there, and they refused to do that, and hence the police did what they had to do. So yesterday, just before all the panic buying was taking place and everything, let's take a quick look at what was happening around what would normally be a very busy food court at the Queen's Plaza. The people just, you can see scattered people, and then, of course, not as many people out and about there as you normally would see, because this area normally is very, very busy. But again, like I said, that yesterday there were not many people out and about in those areas. And of course, then we come to the Marriott, which is one of the detention centers, and right here, of course, we now a very, very busy hotel otherwise, but this is one of those centers. And whenever the bus arrives there from the airport, there is always a police presence, and the police will, divert people away from the footpath. You have to cross the road, go across the other side, cross over, and they don't even let people pass through there. So that's a lot of effort that goes into monitoring all of this situation. And this morning, what would be a very, very busy street had very few people in there as well. So this is right outside view from our studio. You can see the Howard Street wharves, which would normally be crowded this time of the morning. People would be walking about doing their Saturday things, getting in for their coffee and the walks. As you can see the streets, apart from few cars, you can hardly see any movement happening there at all. This is the other side. We've got a right angle view on the corner from our studios. So as you can see, all those streets there would have been packed with cars. You can see one or two cars going in and about as well. So these are live scenes coming out of our studio right at this point in time. Very deserted streets right here in Brisbane at this point in time, as I mentioned before. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, you are listening to Australian Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times, Gentex Multimedia's live presentation today here from Brisbane. And, of course, we are in a 3-day lockdown. And those scenes there were saying the deserted streets of Brisbane right at this point in time. Well, first up, before we get into the news, is the message from Prime Minister after the National Cabinet meeting yesterday.
Everyone, the National Cabinet has met. We will meet on a fortnightly basis now, at least. If there are requirements to meet more regularly, then we will certainly be doing so. It was a very productive meeting. I want to thank all the Premiers and Chief Ministers for coming together, but I particularly want to thank the work done by the medical expert panel, the HPPC, who's been meeting every day now for many weeks and has been following very closely the developments of this new strain that has emerged, firstly out of the UK, but has now moved to many countries around the world. Indeed, 80% of Australians registered overseas are now in countries where that new strain is evident. And there are other strains as well, as the Chief Medical Officer will set out, which means that this virus continues to write its own rules, and that means that we must continue to be adaptable in how we continue to fight it. And that's what we have done today as we've come together. Today's meeting was an opportunity to accept the recommendations of the expert medical panel, the AHPPC, and in responding to my request to have a set of improved measures to tighten the end-to-end process of international arrivals in Australia, and both from the time of embarkation and entry into the airport all the way through to their acquittal from the formal quarantine period. It was also an opportunity to provide an update to states and territories on what we briefed you on here yesterday on the rollout of the national vaccine program, and that was very well received. And I thank all states and territories for their engagement in that process, and we substantively dealt with that issue yesterday. It was also, straight off the bat, important to review the situation in Queensland, as well as get updates on New South Wales and in Victoria. The situation in Brisbane is a serious situation. Yes, we know there is only one case, but what we do know is that this new strain is some 70% more transmissible than the previous strains of the virus. This strain is likely to become, in the very near future, the dominant strain, as it largely already is, Paul, in the UK. But we anticipate that this will become the more dominant strain of the virus globally. And so the idea that it somehow can be contained just out of the United Kingdom is a false hope. As I said, 80% of the Australians looking to come back are in countries that have had exposure to that strain of the virus. And so it is a very wise decision by the Queensland Government, by Premier Palaszczuk, to put in place the precaution she has over the next few days. It moves so quickly, far more quickly than previous strains of the virus, and that means we need to give our contact tracers that head start to ensure that they can track down and run down all of the contacts from this individual and ensure that they can be identified, isolated, that people in the appropriate places can get the testing. And we'll see the same, I'm sure, response to the call for testing in Queensland as we've seen in Victoria and we've seen in New South Wales that has been so effective in containing the spread of the most recent outbreaks that we've seen there. But in Brisbane we're dealing with a different situation. There are many unknowns and uncertainties in relation to the new strain, and so that's why this precautionary approach we believe is very sensible. It has the full support of our Chief Medical Officer, the AHPPC, all the Premiers, the Chief Ministers and of course myself, as I indicated earlier today. This will hopefully ensure that we do not see this go to the next level. And so I want to thank everyone in Queensland, as I have, and those in the Northern Beaches and Melbourne in the past, for the patience that they'll be called on over the next few days. Hopefully that's what it will be. But as we all know, we will just have to take this step by step. So the Brisbane hotspot, as we are declaring it at a Commonwealth level, it is different to the normal definition we've applied to hotspots, but you've got to change the rules where you know that there is new information and new uncertainties that are being introduced, and that is the case in relation to this strain. And that applies to Brisbane, Logan, Moreton, Ipswich and Redlands. This comes into effect at 6 o'clock this evening, is my understanding, and our message to Australians who are in those areas is stay where you are. Don't go anywhere. Don't go home to another state or any other part of your state. Over the next few days, stay where you are. If you're somewhere else and you are planning to go there, don't. If you are from any of those places and you are somewhere else, you may be here in the ACT, you may be in Western Australia, you may be in Victoria. You should treat yourself as if you are in those places. You should get tested, you should monitor your symptoms, and until you've gone through the testing process, you should remain isolated. This is something we can't allow to get ahead of us, and the quick response here, proportionate, I would stress. I believe this is a proportionate response to the very real risk. I think all of you know that I've always taken a very balanced approach when it comes to weighing up the risks, the need to keep things open where we can. Certainly had plenty of discussions around that table regarding domestic borders and the like. But where I believe the risk is absolutely proportionate, I can tell you I'll back it in. And on this occasion I'm advised and believe that this is the most prudent course of action to ensure that the great gains that have been made over the course of this last year are not put at risk by this most recent strain. So, as a result, we decided to take a number of actions today in relation to quarantine and how it operates, as well as in relation to flights. The purpose here is to both reduce and debulk the risk in terms of exposure to the new strain. Starting firstly with arrangements that are substantively already in place on what the Chief Medical Officer would call the should basis, and turning them into the must basis. It is already largely practiced, and particularly I should stress for flights that are being chartered by the Commonwealth Government. And so the Commonwealth Government, these arrangements are already in place in terms of the flights that we are chartering. But this will now be a requirement right across the board. Travellers to Australia must return a negative COVID-19 test result prior to departure to Australia. There will be exemptions in extenuating circumstances, and this could include for seasonal workers from amber risk countries where there is limited access to testing, with mitigation of testing on arrival in Australia. In the Pacific, where this applies, this is not presently an issue, but where we can put those mitigations in place, people will be aware of the challenges in the ag sector, particularly in the harvest, particularly in the stone fruit industry. You know, we need to have tailored responses when it comes to applying this. Individuals, including travellers and staff, must undertake measures for infection prevention and control for international travel. That includes passengers to wear masks throughout international flights, crew to wear masks and other personal protective equipment where appropriate, airlines to have appropriate infection prevention and control measures on board aircraft, all individuals within Australian international airport environments to wear a mask. Passengers should wear masks while in international airports overseas. International aircrew must undergo a COVID-19 test in Australia every 7 days or on arrival. That will be determined by the state jurisdictions. To continue to quarantine in dedicated quarantine facilities between international flights or for 14 days. No special rules for flight crews moving about. Not reposition for an ongoing international flight unless they do so on a crew-only flight. In addition, we agreed that for domestic travel, mask wearing will be mandatory on all domestic flights for all persons in Australia, excluding children under 12, and those 12 and under, I should say, and those with other accepted exemptions. As an additional preventative measure to prevent geographical spread, mask wearing will be mandatory in all domestic airports in Australia. These measures over the course of the next week and the compliance arrangements that sit around that will be put in place by the Commonwealth and the state governments. In addition to these arrangements, we will be reducing till the 15th of February the caps on international arrivals in New South Wales, Western Australia, in Queensland by 50%. That means in New South Wales there will be a weekly cap of 1,505. In Western Australia, the 50% reduction. These will be finalised with state jurisdictions at 512, Queensland at 500. Victoria, there'll be no change because they're already operating at less than 50% of their current capacity, or we're on their way back. That will be reviewed now by the 15th of February, not under the arrangement we previously had, which was at the end of this month. South Australia, there is no change. They're at 490 at a relatively low level compared to the other jurisdictions. In the smaller jurisdictions, the ACT, the Northern Territory, Tasmania, they are very bespoke arrangements in relation to those airports, and they'll be settled between the Commonwealth and those jurisdictions specifically. In the Northern Territory in particular, they are the primary entry point and will be the sole entry point for chartered flights that the Commonwealth has put in place. Those chartered flights will continue over the course. There was one arriving next week, because without chartered...
So, of updates on chartered flights and travel information, please log on to our the sites as well, and we will keep you updated. There are some flights which will be operating from Brisbane, so we'll bring you all those updates every Thursday with Tanvi Goyal of All India Travels, and of course Gaura Travels are arranging some of these flights there as well. Well, right now, as I mentioned before, that today we'll also be joining with the PBD. So what is PBD? PBD is Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, and it happens every year on the 9th of January. 9th of January is a very special day for us as well, but it is always on the 9th of January. And together with that, we normally have our what we know as the Gopia conferences, the international conference. We tie it in. So here's a glimpse of the past ones.
Which was distressed by the...
And this is Salman Khurshid at our annual conference in 2011 in Delhi.
Because we were not growing fast enough, and people who've now gone where they've gone as a minority, where they've gone as a community that has to prove its worth and its merit, and that has actually struggled and striven and then moved to the top and proved itself. How and why will they not understand what we feel here?
That's Munish Gupta,
That wants a greater say in
NRIPIO, TV.
Democracy. Nothing to do with minorities in terms of religion and language alone. You can feel a minority despite being in a majority. The moment you speak and think and aspire differently from a group of people amongst whom you live, you become a minority. Every time you think innovatively, you're a minority.
This is Ryan Murphy.
Jesus Christ a minority, and every prophet.
Hariwariaji.
Prophet converts.
So, we have the functions and events in the day, and of course the night finishes off with some kind of cultural items. A beautiful dance rendition there with showcasing colors of India and all different. At the back you can see Manipuri dances. So each dance form represents each state, and they just transform. The other dancers stand on the side. As soon as the tent comes in, they come in. A beautiful way of presenting colors of India. These are all live recordings by myself from previous PBDs. So as you can see, it's quite a full-on one, and it's happening today. So later on, we will, as soon as we join in live, we will bring that. But yesterday was of course, with the PBD, we always have the youth PBD. The youth PBD happened via Zoom. A similar thing will happen today. So let's take a look at some of the glimpses from yesterday's youth PBD.
India. Welcome, sir. Shri V. Muralidharan, Minister of State, External Affairs, Government of India. Welcome, sir. It's an absolute honor and matter of great pride for us to welcome our esteemed panelists to joining us from different corners of the world in this celebration. A hearty welcome to you all. Since the Yuva Pravasi Bharati Divas 2021 is an effort to bring together the young achievers and youth change makers from India and Indian diaspora across the world, the celebration would be incomplete without their presence. So I'm extremely delighted to welcome our vibrant youth from all across the globe joining us today. As we all know, that the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is celebrated on 9th of January every year by the Ministry of External Affairs. The Yuva Pravasi Bharatiya Divas on the same line is celebrated every alternate year. And it is a unique experience for all of us, as due to COVID-19, we are celebrating it virtually this year. As Swami Vivekananda says, Uttishtat, Jagrat, Prapya Varani Bodhat. That means, arise, awake, and stop not until the goal is achieved. So, no pandemic is going to stop us. And here we are. Before we begin the program, I would like to give you a quick brief about the format of the event. There will be two sessions. The first session will be a ministerial segment in which honorable ministers will be guiding us with their remarks. And the second session is going to be a technical segment on the topic bringing together young achievers from India and Indian diaspora, in which the panelists will be sharing their thoughts, views, and experiences on the topic with us. So, without any further delay, may I please request Shri Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary OIA and CPV Division, Ministry of External Affairs, for his address. Sir.
Thank you. Honorable Ms. Priyanka Radhakrishnan, Minister from New Zealand, special guest of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention, and a most distinguished Pravasi. Honorable Shri Kiren Rijiju, Minister of State for Youth Affairs and Sports, Honorable Shri V. Muralidharan, Minister of State for External Affairs, Ms. Usha Sharma, Secretary, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, and most importantly, Pravasis and dear members of the youth who are assembled here today. Good morning from New Delhi, and welcome to the Youth Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Conference, which seeks to bring together young achievers. In this dynamic and transformational era, guided by technology and innovation, where restructuring of the economy and social contacts is taking place at a rapid pace, and reform of multilateral institutions and arrangements is anticipated, the role of the youth is vital. If we look at the opportunities and challenges of the 21st century, we find that the challenges are mostly a legacy of our past, while the prospects for the future are brighter, particularly for a buoyant India with its empowered Indian youth and the vibrant diaspora. Every day as we look around, we find a deep concern for community and its welfare in the youth. We find positive action to protect our climate and harness our natural resources led by the youth. We find the birth of new startups and innovations of unicorns initiated by the youth. We find deep commitment to political and social action for democracy and freedom among the youth. It is as it should be that the youth are in the forefront of securing the aspirations for a better world. As you know, our approach in India towards the engagement with the diaspora is based on the 4 C's: care, connect, celebrate, and contribute. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this engagement is the one with the youth. For our diaspora youth, we recently held the Bharat Ko Janiye quiz competition. This linked the diaspora youth to their roots and to our glorious heritage. It will also provide an opportunity to the winners, who will be announced tomorrow at the inaugural session by the Prime Minister, to embark on a Bharat Darshan, that is a tour of India, coordinated by the Ministry of External Affairs. Our Know India program brings groups of diaspora youth for a familiarization tour of India. And this includes visits to historic and tourist sites, and also exchanges in institutions of excellence and interaction with the youth of India. The scholarship program for Indian diaspora provides avenues for studying in our premier institutions of learning, while sharing time and thoughts with their Indian counterparts. Our intention here in India is to build the bridges between the youth of India and the youth of our diaspora across the world. We build the bridges, and the youth will adorn it with their actions. India is a young country, and our youth today is more able and more willing to guide their destinies. We are enthused that we have a large proportion of young people in our population, as it adds vitality to our development process, as we are engaged in the transformation that will make India and the world a better place. In this, the youth has a great responsibility and an opportunity which can be realized through a shared common voice. It is thus appropriate that we begin the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas celebrations with this event commemorating the youth. I thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to the discussions that will follow. I feel energetic with the youth around us. Thank you.
Sober, sir, for your kind words. Now, may I please take the privilege to invite the Kiren Rijiju, Minister of State, Independent Charge for Youth Affairs and Sports, for his inaugural address. Sir.
Good morning to all of you, and maybe afternoon in Australia and New Zealand, eastern part of the world. My dear colleague, Sri V. Muralidharan, Minister of State for External Affairs, Government of India, the special guest of the event, Honorable Ms. Priyanka Radhakrishnan, Minister for Community and Political Sector, New Zealand, Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary Overseas Indian Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, Mrs. Usha Sharma, Secretary Department of Youth Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, Greece, Galaxy of Indian Diaspora on this virtual platform. I'm very delighted that my ministry is partnering with the Ministry of External Affairs to host this very important event, and I will see the theme of this year, contributing to the Atmanirbhar Bharat. This is completely relating with the idea of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji, make India truly self-reliant, a country which is very progressive and a leading force in the community of nations. I'm also very happy to inform that the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, we have been very, very active during this lockdown period and this pandemic period. And I'm sure our friends, our youth who have a root in India, ancestral root, you will feel proud whenever India does good. In the same manner, we also feel proud whenever any person of Indian origin succeeds in various fields across the globe. I have been traveling very widely across the globe since 1987 at a very young age, and whenever I see our person of Indian origin in any part of the world, I feel extremely delighted, and we celebrate their success. So I'm sure when India is doing good across the globe, they will also share the pride. They will definitely be very happy. And when Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji started this Pravasi Bharat, sometime way back in the period of 1999-2004, we all were part of those initial celebrations, and I could realize that our Indian friends, they felt connected with our country. They felt that they have not been forgotten, because whenever I used to go abroad, there used to be some disconnect. They used to think that India is a country of their origin, but they have left it behind. There was no direct occasion to celebrate our connect. So, the visionary idea of Vajpayee ji, the entire Indian diaspora was brought under their platform. And this is something which we felt that it is the strength of India. India as a nation in Indian diaspora globally. We know our Indian diaspora, how successful they are wherever they are. And in the present time, it has never been like that Indian diaspora and India as a nation, we are so deeply connected. Our Honorable Prime Minister, wherever he travels, he must have has a special time for Indian diaspora. Addresses our Indian diaspora, he meets them and he exchanges ideas and invite people of Indian origin come to India and get connected with the roots. When I was Minister of State in the Ministry of Home Affairs, I dealt this subject of OCI very closely. After the announcement of our Honorable Prime Minister, we merged person of Indian origin and all other status under OCI, thereby making all the Indian diaspora very easily connectable with the country. No any kind of hindrances or obstacles in terms of visit, sending visa, or want to do anything in the country of their origin. Today, on this very auspicious occasion, but still a challenging time, we are still grappling with this pandemic. I think the youth across the globe, we have to take the leadership role. I'm very happy to inform that close to 7 million youth volunteers in India, we are in the forefront, working as a COVID warriors. And we are being, having the opportunity of working with international agencies, UN agencies who are working in India. We are tying up with various other departments, private organizations, and our youths are very much in the forefront in combating and defeating the COVID-19. So I'm sure our Indian diaspora across youth, I would like to appeal that we must connect more deeply the youth of India and the Indian diaspora. We must have a platform where we can share the ideas, we can converge our strength and work together. I'm forever ready as the minister in charge for the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. India is poised to take the leadership role wherever it is necessary. Our Prime Minister has shown his leadership. He has shown his skill to play a very critical and important role in the global affairs. Same manner, youth of India are ready. We will take whatever responsibility is given to us and wherever it is necessary. And in this occasion, I would like to extend my gratitude to my colleague Muralidharanji and the entire team, including our the secretary and all the officers for giving this great platform opportunity to the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Sports. Our secretary, Department of Youth Affairs, Usha Sharma ji, is sitting here. Our officers are here. We are ready to take up any challenge, any responsibility, and we will be moving shoulder to shoulder with all our friends, especially the Indian youth across the globe. Without taking much time, extend my greetings to all the young friends. Till this is a new year, we are still fresh in the advent of the new year 2021, despite difficult time. Happy New Year to all of you and best wishes to everyone for a more better time ahead, and wishing all a happy and New Year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind words, sir. Moving ahead, now I would like to request Ms. Priyanka Radhakrishnan, our special guest for today, Minister for Community and Voluntary Sector of New Zealand, to please share her thoughts with us. Ma'am.
Thank you. Can I just check that everyone can hear me all right before I start? Just a quick.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Right. Thank you. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu Alaikum. Greetings to all of you in the official languages of Bharat, of India. Namaskaram in my mother tongue, and in Te Reo Māori, the indigenous language of New Zealand, Tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening to you all. It's a warm summer evening here in New Zealand. Can I just begin by thanking you for the opportunity to be part of this conference this evening, and just begin by acknowledging Sri Sanjay Bhattacharya, His Excellency Mr. Kiren Rijiju, His Excellency Mr. V. Muralidharan from the Indian government, other panelists who will be speaking this evening, and all the young people from different parts of the world who are watching this evening. It is unfortunate that we can't meet in person this year, but I am grateful that we have the technology that we do so that this, the Yuva Pravasi Bharatiya Divas 2021 can go ahead this year, regardless of the global pandemic situation that we all find ourselves in. In fact, my last trip before our borders closed in New Zealand was to India, and it was part of a delegation that was led by our then Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Winston Peters, and our then Trade Minister, the Honourable David Parker. We were there along with a business delegation. We had a wonderful trip, and amongst other meetings, we also met with the Minister for External Affairs, Dr. Jayashankar, in a bilateral as well. And in fact, we've had about 3 ministerial visits to India from New Zealand just in the last term alone. And that's because New Zealand's relationship with India is a priority for us. And its importance, India's importance to New Zealand, continues to grow. India's strong economy, large population, and international influence make it a key partner for us in the Indo-Pacific region. And of course, both our nations have an interest in the prosperity and the stability of the Indo-Pacific. And in fact, India and New Zealand have a long-standing, warm and growing relationship with our ties going back to the 1800s, with Indians settling in Christchurch as early as the 1850s, large numbers of immigrants, particularly from Punjab and Gujarat, who came to New Zealand in the 1890s, Indian troops who fought alongside the Anzacs in Gallipoli in 1915, and today 5% of New Zealand's population is of Indian origin. And of course, we've been long-time sporting rivals on the cricket pitch as well. For me, as a New Zealander of Indian origin, the fact that I was born in India and still have close family in India means that my connection with India is even deeper. And I feel the warmth that Shri Kiren Rijiju mentioned in your speech, sir. You talked about the warmth, or the fact that India celebrates with those from its diaspora. And I must say that I felt that when I was sworn in as a Minister of the Crown here in New Zealand. I experienced an outpouring of warmth from India, from politicians, from the media, from faith leaders, community organizations, companies, individuals. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who sent me a message of congratulations as well. The portfolios that I hold in our current government include youth, the community and voluntary sector, as was mentioned, and also diversity, inclusion, and ethnic communities. And I'm also the Associate Minister for Social Development and Employment, all areas that are close to my heart and particularly important, I feel, in this changing environment, exacerbated by the impacts of COVID as well. And today I address you in my capacity as the Minister for Youth, where our focus, of course, is to support our young people to thrive and to focus on equity, on an equitable manner in which to do that. We had our election here in New Zealand in October 2020, and our government was sworn in the month after. Our current Labour government takes office at a time of unparalleled international crisis. It faces the greatest public health emergency since the global flu pandemic about a century ago. And the ensuing economic shock represents the largest global downturn since the Great Depression. So we've got some specific challenges to weather, but also equally some opportunities to build on. New Zealand's health response to COVID has been based on an elimination strategy, which means that our first line of defense is our border, and that a strong border regime is crucial to keeping COVID out of the community, and that involves a managed isolation facility that everyone has to go to if they cross the border, return to New Zealand. If it does reappear in terms of community transmission, it means stamping it out as soon as possible. As of yesterday, we've had 62 active cases at the border in our managed isolation facilities, and we haven't had a case of community transmission since 18th November 2020. New Zealand's success in fighting the virus means that we are better positioned for recovery compared to a number of countries. And we've already seen that, in employment, export and growth numbers are better than expected. And so our government's program for the next 3 years is to make the most of that head start. We've got 3 overarching objectives: to keep New Zealanders safe from COVID, to accelerate our economic recovery, and to lay the foundations for a better future. 2020 was undeniably tough for everyone, including our youth. And as I prepared for today's address, I thought I'd say a few words on youth well-being, which I think is particularly apt in this environment. And I hope, as I touch on some of the challenges that our young people are facing in New Zealand, that will resonate with youth across the globe as well. Youth I've engaged with and the research that I've read from agencies who engage with our youth tell us that there are some things that all young people value. Things like accessible, affordable, high quality education, but equally being equipped with the life skills and the knowledge to thrive in the 21st century. Employment opportunities, wanting the cost of living to reduce, being able to afford their first home. There's also the fact that we live in a digital era, and that poses some great benefits, as we've seen during the COVID pandemic and as we see now, but it can also be dangerous. I came across a survey recently that noted that our youth, despite being so digitally connected, experience loneliness the most. And so ensuring that we support a variety of ways for young people to stay connected, whether it's through sports, through the arts, other activities, equally yoga, meditation, that I think are actually some of India's greatest exports to the West. There is also a huge appetite for social change amongst our young people. A significant protective factor for young people's well-being here in New Zealand is their sense of purpose and belonging. And interestingly enough, for many New Zealand youth, their sense of purpose was strengthened during the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, some of the highest levels of restrictions that we had here in New Zealand. And that's because many of them volunteered with organizations that were providing essential services to the elderly and to others who couldn't get out and shop for the basic necessities that they needed. In fact, we have a charity here called the Student Volunteer Army that was started by one young person and has now a membership of hundreds. And they mobilize every time there is a disaster or a specific need to come together and help others, like the COVID lockdowns. Youth have also told us that some of their greatest concerns are around issues of discrimination, whether that's racism based on ethnicity, sexism, discrimination against youth with disabilities, or those who identify with the LGBTQI communities. Certain groups of youth, as we know, face additional barriers and specific barriers. We also have a strong not-for-profit sector here in New Zealand, organizations that are run by young people from different ethnic communities, for example, who provide additional support to, say, new migrants, international students, including those from India here as well. We've got organizations equally that form support networks to lift the aspirations of our young people from specific groups. An example of that is our Young Sikh Professionals Network that is incredibly strong. Youth mental health, mental well-being, and the prevention of suicide are also challenges that we face here in New Zealand. And I find are issues that are raised increasingly by young people from our Indian communities as well here in New Zealand. And so our government's work program has a strong emphasis on improving early access to mental health support and also addressing some of the risk factors, strengthening the protective factors that support young people's resilience. We also need people in leadership positions to talk openly about what they do to take care of their physical and mental health, so that our young people know that they're not alone when they do experience challenges or things like an imposter syndrome. And these are some things that our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, talks quite openly about here. There's also, for those in leadership positions, often a societal expectation of what leadership should look like. And Prime Minister talks about that as well. In fact, she was recently interviewed, and I'll end on this. She was recently interviewed about her leadership style, her values, mental well-being, and she made an excellent point that I want to share here today. She said that often when we think about the values we want to teach our children, they're often universal values of generosity, honesty, kindness, humility, respecting others, treating others well, and we want them to be treated well as well. And yet when we look to our leaders, we often expect something quite different. We expect them to be aggressive, to show no mercy, to be ruthless, to show no weakness. And so my final point is a message for young people, given the theme of today's conference is bringing together young achievers, both from India and the diaspora. My message for you is not to let society put you in a box and expect you to conform to stereotypes. Forge your own leadership style based on the values that guide you. And take some time out to protect your mental health, because we all do our jobs better when we're able to care for ourselves Often that's seen as a bit of weakness, but it shouldn't be. So once again, can I end on that note and thank you for the invitation to be part of this conference this evening. And can I also take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy New Year. Thank you.
And we'll leave that youth conference there, and don't forget that later on today, that was from yesterday, was the youth PBD. And of course, we know that today, later on, we'll be joining in and bringing to you live coverage of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas 2021, which is the 16th PBD. Well, we have personally attended quite a few of those in India, and it's always a wonderful, wonderful experience. And the reasoning behind holding it on the 9th of January is not because it's our wedding anniversary, but it's that day when Mahatma Gandhi came back from South Africa to India, the biggest Pravasi of them all. So that's why PBD is organized on 9th of January with as many challenges as it might pose, as we know Delhi airport and moving in and around in the cold weather and everything around this time. But the government has stood firm that 9th January is the PBD, and that's when it happens, and we all converge onto Delhi or wherever. Every second year it goes to some different cities. Last year it was together with Kumbh Mela. So it is always good to have that connection once again. Don't forget that today, later in the day, we will be joining in with the main PBD. We'll probably go through the opening sessions and some of the selected parts. Otherwise, it will be too long to be live streamed from here. But right now, it's wonderful that you could join in. Here's a message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world. And don't forget that every Wednesday we have the real estate update together with GlobeNet Realty. Well, right now, as I mentioned before, it's goodbye from this segment. We'll be joining in later again in the day when we'll bring to you some updates together with that live coverage of the actual PBD 2021, the 16th PBD, coming live to you from Delhi, and we will be joining that live. We will do a live coverage from here, so don't forget to join us at that time. Until that time, it's goodbye from me.